So yeah, first news of today, Heroku is actually adding some new features, which is really exciting. Heroku's been ever since like COVID, it's been kind of slow on the new features, new changes, but we've been working and talking with Bob Wise over at Heroku, who's the new CEO and running that. Great guy, and really enjoying the vision he has with it with the rest of his team. And they're really revitalizing the product itself. And one of the big things they're doing here is Heroku's introducing basic dynos, which is a cost-effective way to do app testing, iteration, prototyping, things like that. So for those of you who remember way back when, Heroku had a free tier. Unfortunately, that's gotten retired. So, we're not going to have free $0 dynos. That being said, these basic dynos are extremely inexpensive, like pennies on the dollar. And it's again, I'm looking forward to incorporating this to some of our again, like our prototyping and just proof of concept type work when we're looking to show some capabilities of how Heroku works and is able to be deployed and how easy it is without having to spool up a standard dyno, which, to be fair, like standard dynos were never that expensive anyway, but it's just nice to have this option where if you're not doing any volumetric testing on large compute, large number of users or data processing, you're just like, hey, I need to branch this off. I want to test this little feature, see if this little applet ties into your website, your mobile app, a small service that you're playing around with, or if you're just if you're on the Salesforce side, you're a solutions engineer, or you're working with another partner like us, and they're like, hey, can you guys demo, how would Heroku community work? Show us something. Like partners like us could scale some of these up really quickly in our existing contracts without having to blow the budget, or getting a bunch of larger dynos to do something super basic that's going to be potentially throwaway or just test work for those of you in the Salesforce world, like dev sandbox type stuff. So this is really cool. I'm excited to see this get rolled out and other features like this. From my understanding, just based on reading the article and my knowledge of what Heroku is, they're going to continue to add functionality like this for us developers here, which is fantastic, just giving us more flexibility moving forward. Justin, I know I was just doing the run through here, but do you have any thoughts on this new change?
Yeah, I do. So one of the things I like about this, I'm gonna hit a few key points here. So one, with the disappearance of like free tier Heroku plans and being able to get in, obviously there's now a bit of a barrier of entry to get on the platform. And what I like to see about these kinds of additions is that, Salesforce isn't just focused on like their enterprise tier customers and like what's the biggest size, largest infrastructure package we can sell. They're figuring out how can we have these small incremental infrastructure pieces to roll out, which is cool because, prior to this basic dyno, they have the eco dyno type, which is only available through their credit card model. And it does have things like going to sleep after enough idle time, things like that, to have that low barrier to entry for, a private individual or like a very early stage startup to experiment with a concept. But the second you get into Heroku Enterprise, and for those of you in the Salesforce ecosystem, you know that that's moving from the pay monthly credit card model to actually getting on a contract with Heroku. Eco dynos aren't available. You can't provision them in there. So that idea of a super lightweight piece of infrastructure that you're really using to smell check something like that, it wasn't available there. So basic dynos are available. So you're now getting kind of like that counterpart to an eco dyno, but it's still dedicated to you. The way the math works out, for those of you that know Heroku, where a standard dyno uses one dyno unit, a basic uses 0.28, which is a silly number, but basically a quarter. So when you do just need to test like a technical implementation of something without scale, this means that developers can procure a very small chunk of infrastructure just to check that like all the switches flip the way you want them to, and then they can tear it back down. So this is hugely advantageous for setting up like temporary cloud-based testing environments, development environments. I think it's a big win.
Yeah, an engineer was behind setting that up when they went with 0.28, because someone said, why is it not just a quarter? It's like, well, it's got to be 0.28 because the infrastructure costs the reason, and really you can't do this, and AWS behind, like, I'm sure there was a long explanation of why it can't be a quarter, but that's just going to drive everyone nuts. But let's just say effectively a quarter. Round down.
But
Close
I mean,
enough for government work.
Yeah, you can. Well, and when you think about comparing this to like a private space, right? Like a private space, small dyno is 5 units.
Yeah.
So you're getting a lot of basic dynos to just.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's still pennies on the dollar. So to be able to spool a couple of these up to build up your like you said, that piece of infrastructure and run it this way. I'm glad they're doing stuff like this because, again, it's just one of those examples when if you're like developing your apps on AWS by yourself, sans a platform like Heroku, like you have to plan this out. It's like, oh, where's my dev space going to be? How's this going to work? You got to set up all your virtual environments to segment all your infrastructure to segment like that. Doing whether it's just traditional Docker deployment or a Kubernetes, however you're going to do that. And it's just, again, like I've done some virtual machine management by myself, just using Proxmox and a CPU or PC for some fun at-home projects. And again, it's like, oh crap, I have this much hardware, here's what I need to do. And this makes it so much easier to be like, oh yeah, I'll use it 0.28, not a quarter, but 0.28. Compute, but you get a full virtual machine to do this like effectively. So it's like, it's really nice that they're able to automate this. It's just one of those nice things that, again, this is why you do that, because for all the business people that are going to listen to this, all the Salesforce aides going to listen to this, and I just said VM, RAM, like they're just glossed over. It's just nice to be like, I don't have to worry about any of that. I just want the cheap thing, and this will run a test, and I'll know if my idea works, if my testing works or whatnot, and I don't have to spend a full $1 on this. I spend 0.28 of $1.
Exactly. Well, because what was that meme you shared with me a couple weeks ago, right? Everybody has a test environment. Some people are lucky enough to have a separate environment for production.
Yeah, exactly.
So what this really means is you can afford to have a test environment. And I'm hoping it's going to drive more use of the Heroku review app functionality in their pipelines. Like, It's like, oh, I have a pull request, spin up a version of the app for that pull request and actually test it. Because I feel like that's an underused feature because of the cost of the dynos, the add-ons, like actually replicating that environment. So having small scale add-ons and dynos that you can provision as your stand-in for the smell check, I think that's huge. It's brilliant.
Yep.